Welcome to Butterflies of Wisdom, everyone. As you know, today is Tuesday. By the time you guys hear this one, it will be Wednesday. And so Mel and I are actually working on two podcasts. This is one of them. The other one is Wisdom of Fashion, which just launched last week, which I'm so excited about, all about fashion. This one is more of a smattering of solo entrepreneurship than that one. We at least have a focus based on that one. And so I wanted to give you guys an update on books and my educational journey. Well, books, it stands right now that I have a book coming out in August, my own book coming out in August. I'm slowly but surely rewriting that one and then working on that one with the editor and editing my own book. And then that one is The Mosaic of CP. And then I have a book about Robin Williams, believe it or not, and mental illness, believe it or not, coming out in September. This is a book that I worked on a long time ago, and it's finally coming out, you guys, in September. I thought I would never see the light of day on this book that I was honored and lucky enough to do the introduction for, so we'll see where that happens with that book. And, oh yeah, on my educational journey update here, I had a great meeting with special ed. I realized today that my classes are all self-paced, but I have 1 week to do the modules, so that will work out in my favor. Although maybe the 1 week will not work out in my favor. So what I'm thinking of doing is only coming out from under my educational block in the fall to do podcasting and go to work. So if you try to get a hold of me, you guys, and this includes Mel, I may not be the easiest person to get along with starting in September. So just to be nice to the college students here trying to get a degree in fashion journalism, which will be a fun degree to have. And since I love interviewing people, I thought, well, might as well turn my degree into a paycheck. Well, might as well turn my passion into a paycheck. So that's the update on that. So we're slowly but surely getting into fashion journalism school, but slow and steady wins the race from the tortoise and a hare. So today Mel and I are going to actually talk about, this is our last how to build a podcast. And today we're actually going to talk about how to build a website. There's several ways you can do it. And then we're going to throw out our favorite podcast to you guys, so maybe you can go listen to our favorite podcast. I have a couple, and I know Mel has a couple as well. So, and if you hear noise in the background, I'm going to assume Mel's still busy. He's just transferring stuff. So if you hear noise in the background, that's Mel, that's not me. So, how to build a website. Okay, now you have this podcast. You're thinking, well, should I use the podcast hosting website or should I use my own? Now, personally, if I was doing it all over again, I would just use the podcast hosting website for temporary reasons. Because, quite frankly, I'm not a skilled website designer. I have skilled website designers in my contacts, and trust me, it's someone wants to build a website for Wisdom of Fashion, we would be forever grateful on that end. But that's all another podcast in itself. So what I'm saying is just use the podcast website temporarily. It doesn't have all the bells and whistles like a typical website would, but the main factor is iTunes. People are not going to necessarily be looking at your website for show notes unless they're really, really, really trying to kill time. And I mean that in all sense of the word, because a lot of podcasts are consumed by our iPhone. I mean, as I said, the iPhone has the purple button already built into it called Apple Podcasts, and of course, Apple changed the name. They haven't necessarily rebranded very well, but the iPhone is already set up for podcasts, and 90% of podcasts are consumed mobilely. So people are not going to be chasing you down at your website. They might be looking at your website to contact you. Now, what we do for Butterflies of Wisdom is my producer / my assistant, Danielle Coulter, she updates the website because, as I said, I'm not a website designer, and I don't want my website to go down. So I gave her the most simple website to start out with that she feels comfortable with, and then I asked her, I said, would you mind updating the website? Of course, she being my BFF said, yes, I would be happy to help you. But I said to her, look, it's the most easy website and easy website to set up, most easy website to screw up. Thank God she hasn't screwed up yet. But the day she does, I'll go right back in and fix it. So she doesn't feel guilty about that. Because granted, she has CP, and that's all another podcast in itself. So what I'm trying to say is just Google free websites. I know there's Squarespace. I know there's WeBelieve. I know there's Wix.com. Squarespace, actually, you can get a 14-day trial of Squarespace. WeBelieve is free. I know that because we use it. Wix, I know, is free. So just get a free website to start, and then you can upgrade the website. Do not use the podcasting hosting website that your podcast host provides, i.e. Libsyn, i.e. Blueberry, i.e. Simplecast, i.e. Podbean. Just use it temporarily. The big key here is iTunes, and they have badges on the Apple Podcast sites that automatically take you to the Apple Podcast feed, which I haven't put on my website yet, and it will say listen in Apple Podcast, listen in Stitcher, listen on Libsyn.com. Now, there's embedded players in Libsyn.com, which people can automatically start playing when they go to their website. You guys know you will hear music on the background of some websites. That's what they call embedded automatic player. I have not installed that on my website. I should be better at my own website than I actually am, speaking of websites and podcasting, but I will eventually get there. It may take me 2 years when I graduate college. That's my next goal, is to ramp up my podcast website. But I'm saying do not use the typical podcast host website, because even though these podcast posts don't go down on you. They are meant for media files only. They're not meant for website infographics, and they're not meant for websites. So my website is butterfliesofwisdom.weebly.com, and you guys know that by now. And so that's why I suggest that you use a totally different website hosting platform than the website that Libsyn has given you, or whatever podcast host you use. Now, Mel, does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it's just, you want to keep it simple, and I like the point that you made that people really won't be spending a whole lot of time on the website. They're not really there for that. They're there for your podcast content. So,
Yeah.
just use whatever's easiest. The least resistance, path of least resistance, and the less expense on oneself. Well, as you're trying to put it together, right? You really want to get yourself on the air, and don't chase shiny objects. Stick to the matter at hand.
Yes. Don't chase shiny objects. And as I'm talking to you guys, I have a pair of Apple headphones that just died on me. So if I sound a little full way, I'm multitasking. But that's the life of a podcaster. And so I'm going to actually have Mel ask me a couple of questions about websites. And I'm glad if there's any website designers out there that actually listen to this podcast and want to help me out to update my websites and put automatic players, please, by all means, I'll take it. And please, if there's any website designers out there that want to help us with wisdom of fashion, please, we'll take that too. I'll take that. I don't know about now, but since I'm doing half the work on those podcasts, I'm sure that Mel would take that. So I want Mel to ask me any questions that she has for me as far as websites, and then we're going to get to the fun part of making a list live of all favorite podcasts. I have this stuck in my head, so I'm sure Mel has his stuck in his head too.
Yeah, it's as far as questions about the website. Now, I do have a website for my business called My Best Fitness, and it's been a while since I touched it. So here's a question for you: how often do you update your website? Okay, first of all. Second, do you have links to all the things that you do? Like if you're, do you have a landing page or a separate page for, all the past podcasts that you do? Do you have questionnaires that you put on there in case people want to reach you and talking about certain issues? What are the things that people can expect while they're exploring your website, and how accessible are you to your audience?
Okay. I give my phone number out to my audience. So I give my cell phone number out to my audience because I am doing the work I do for advocacy in the special ed realm. I have to give my phone number. But to answer your question, I am very accessible, almost too accessible to my audience. I mean, I land up texting my audience half the time if they really need me. And then we do have spots on the website for, let's say, Skype interviews, because at one point we were doing Skype interviews on YouTube. Yes, those are still hanging around under completely different brand names than we do now, Women of Wisdom. So yes, we have different spots on the website. Yes, we provide contact information. Do we provide a form? No, but yes, we should.
Yeah, because in my business, along with in-person coaching, I do online coaching, and I do Facebook ads that lead to short calls to pre-qualify to see if it's a good fit between the client and myself. And also have a webinar that kind of provides more information, and then a landing page that goes right back to the website. I was just wondering if that was the same, if you do a similar format like that, but it doesn't sound like it. How often do you update your website with content?
The Butterflies of Wisdom content?
Yeah. I mean, how often do you do it?
Every single day, me or someone is shooting off content either to Libsyn or to the website. So every single week, we're updating content, and every single week on Wisdom of Fashion, I will be updating content. I just have to figure out the website end of it. Right now, I'm focused on schools, 2 schools to be exact. So that makes it a real big challenge that I have when you have a full-time job and you're trying to do a very successful podcast. Luckily, my schedule is flexible enough that I can do this. But if the podcast ever had to go away, I would make it so that my team would do the website, and then I would do the podcast. So if the podcast has to go away for a little while, which it might, depending on how my school schedule, it might. I just wanted to warn you guys that you may not be hearing from me as often as you do now, but I'll still try and communicate with you guys as often as I do now. But just saying. And so if the podcast ever had to go away, I would make a point of it that I would have someone pushing out content, and then I would just be the voice of the podcast and have someone else do all the grunt work.
Well, I have a simple solution for, if in case your podcast does go away, you could be a guest on mine anytime. How about that?
Yeah.
You won't be going away that far. Your audience would love to hear from you still, for sure.
That's the most simple solution I could ever.
Yeah.
No,
easy.
That's the most simple solution. If I get under the skill block too much, I think my audience would go, when you're underneath the textbooks too much, we need to get you out of the textbooks.
Right. You got to start socializing with us again. You're a little too buried. So did I hear this correctly? Did I hear this correctly? You also wrote a romance novel? Is that what you said?
I wrote so many books now that I can't keep it. I can't keep it straight. But the last one that I physically wrote that I'm working on editing right now for August 12th is my second autobiography, believe it or not.
Oh.
And then I first got involved in mental health when Robin Williams passed away. I was approached by a friend of mine, actually, a New York Times bestselling author, to do a intro for a book that she's writing about Robin Williams. So that book is finally coming out.
Wow, that sounds intriguing. So it's more a research type book, or is it fiction? Help me clarify, please. Exactly what can anybody expect when they read the book?
The book about Robin Williams, of course, I do the intro, but Robin Williams had a really intriguing life up till the time he died, and fortunately, two of my contacts actually knew Robin Williams' wife, and so you get an inside look as to Robin Williams' life.
Right. He's, you know, I remember watching him as Mork and Minnie. That was my first exposure to him in the 70s.
Oh.
I think I was about 12 years. I was 12 years old when that show came out, and he was so far ahead of his time. I mean, such innovation, and you can't make up that kind of energy. I mean, to the end, he was like that. You know, I mean, every talk show I ever saw him on, he was full of life and full of energy, and just his improvisation skills were just off the charts. You know, amazing. So, yeah, he's definitely missed. I've also seen him in some really serious roles. I've seen him on Law and Order. You know, I've seen him in some pretty serious roles.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
But,
He was on Law and Order. He was, he's not going to be a comedian on Law and Order. He's going to be, you know, would be a criminal? I'm sure it was a very serious role that he did. Yeah.
I have to look it up.
So,
now,
you should.
Yeah, but two of my contacts knew his family really well. So it's memoir. It's also raising awareness on mental health. That being said, I'm actually doing, believe it or not, I'm actually doing another podcast all about mental health. And it's called All Fractional Minds, and you guys can find it in iTunes. I'll actually stick the RSS feed in these show notes when I do the show notes, so to this podcast, so you guys can find it. It's not very well known yet, but it will be, and I'm happy to say that I don't do any work on that one. I don't do any behind the scenes on that one. I'm very lucky with that one that I don't do half the behind the scenes work on that one. I should. I have my co-host doing. I have my host doing that one, and he does all the grunt work. So I try to ask him, how can I help you? But he just says, let me do this, and then you wants in and co-host with me, because it's very lonely doing the podcast by yourself, especially when you have a mental illness, you guys. And he has bipolar. My host has bipolar. So, and it's All Fractional Minds is in iTunes. Go check that out, you guys, and you will hear Jeff's story. Jeff actually came on my podcast, and unbeknownst to me, he said, you know, when I have a mental disability, and I'm like, you do? And so he opened up on my podcast, and of course, I opened up the can of worms of him being a podcast to break the stigma, and I would say I would be there 100%. Yes, and so that's why I got another podcasting gig.
Right. Hey, let me ask you this: I'm no medical health mental expert or anything like that, but is anxiety considered a mental health problem?
Yeah. I'm actually dealing with two cases right now that one of them definitely has anxiety because one of them definitely has anxiety because of the family trait of having depression and anxiety, and the other one has anxiety because of grief. So, so yes, anxiety is discussed as a mental health illness, and I have quickly discovered that talked about I thought CP was pushed under the rug. Talk about the hidden disability that is pushed under the rug. My God. Yeesh.
Right.
Yeesh.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. Yeah.
I only ask because I have anxiety, and I've learned to, what word do I want to use here? I don't want to be too careful with it, but I've learned to deal with it and somewhat control it. You know, in the regard that I'm not dealing with it anymore. As far as it controlling me, I have a process and a mechanism where I acknowledge it when it's happening, especially when I'm catastrophizing really hard. So I was just wondering if that was considered.
Nope, they consider it a mental illness. And here I thought CP was pushed under the rug, and here I thought insurance companies didn't want to talk about CP. I was completely wrong. Let's just put it that way. So that's why I say Fractional Minds is one of my top favorite podcasts, not because I'm the co-host by any means, but it talks about a subject that I think should be out there. It's so funny you mention that because I actually had my boss come on the podcast today, and before we recorded Goal, he actually almost made me cry. He said, well, one of my wishes, and I'm glad this is a semi-new boss to me, one of my wishes is that there will be a cure for cerebral palsy eventually. And I just thought to say that. He said that. And this was a very intelligent man. My boss, where he picked him from is Sidwell Friends. He came from Sidwell Friends. And for those of you who know Sidwell Friends, that's where Michelle Obama and Barack sent Sasha and Malia. So, yes, he was dealing with the President of the United States before he came and helped me out, helped my work out. So, so to say that mental illness is classified as a mental disability, it is, but people just don't want to talk about it.
Right. Why is that? I mean, is it just hard to quantify? Is it hard to relate it to how it's disabling, or it doesn't, how it affects everyday normal life and how they can make policies go with it? I mean, why is it not discussed?
Just like CP, mental illness, and I actually talked to an individual who has anxiety and does a podcast all about it. His name is Tim J.P. Collins. If you guys want to go back on the feed and listen to that one. And I actually interviewed him, and because I was so fascinated by his story, I grabbed him and said, do you want to come on my podcast? And of course, he said yes. And so for him, he used to freak out at work, and he used to be in the corporate world. One day he was trying to give a presentation, got anxious on stage, thank you very much, and said, I need to change my life. I need to get awareness out. And he does a fairly intelligent podcast. I believe he's doing it out in London or somewhere in the UK. But to answer your question now, why is that? Because I believe, and no, I'm not a mental health expert, but I do have my doctorate in CP. But this is from a CP standpoint. Just as CP affects people differently, mental illness affects people differently. You can have anxiety to the low levels. You can also have anxiety where you're wringing your hands like this, know tomorrow.
Yeah, it's I can see how that's treated that way. Yeah, I'm sorry. I was just thinking about all the times of catastrophizing and, hearing people talk about it, and I'm very lucky that, it took me close to 30 years to figure it out, but I used to catastrophize horribly. Sometimes there's an onset of it, but I know what to do with it now. But anyway,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to get off track there. But,
that's okay. No, because I was talking about a mental health podcast.
Yeah.
That's why you got off track. But that being said, now I'm going to let you go first in this one. What are your favorite podcasts that you want to throw out to the audience?
Favorite ones that you and I have done?
Favorite ones that you listen to on a daily basis? Not me and you. Favorite ones that you listen to?
I belong to an online coaching group that's mentored and headed by a gentleman named AJ Mirzad. And we have some incredibly inspiring stories of coaches that have transformed their lives, that have gone from in-person training to online training. There are quite a few of them that I've listened to. You have to forgive me. I actually, to be quite honest with you, I was a bit confused. I didn't know you wanted podcasts outside of yours and mine. I fixated on what you and I do. But I've heard some very. That's my fault. I'm not going to lie about it. I'll own it. I'll take ownership of it. But
my fault. I wasn't specific enough.
No, it's okay. I do listen to a lot of audiobooks, which are in some way somewhat of a podcast, because it's the writer's book just being verbalized, and sometimes they do ad lib to it. There are some really terrific ones. I'm listening to one right now by Mel Robbins, The 5-Second Rule, which actually is a great strategy that helps with anxiety and mental health. I really love, if I could just kind of dive into what you and I do. I shared our emotional eating podcast with my colleagues in New York while I was there over the weekend. That really stood out to me. Possibly because I could speak to it really, really well, and it really meant a lot to me. So whenever I think of our podcast, that really, really stands out to me, and I thought that was a really pivotal moment in our relationship, especially from me being able to contribute something at somewhat of a fairly high level on it. So those are the kinds that really kind of stick with me and stir my soul, so to speak. My attention span is not great. If something doesn't captivate me within usually the first 5 seconds to 5 minutes, I'm done. I'll just kind of move on. And it could be anything from the tone of the person's voice. It could be an incredibly dynamic topic, and this is kind of that, and I should work on this a little bit more. I'll see a podcast or audio book or something, and it'll look really intriguing. Or worse yet, it's a recommendation from someone, and I'll turn it on, and I'll be like, oh my God, this is like listening to paint dry, and you can't. It's just not engaging me. And I have to say that I actually turn it off. I can't do it. I can't do it. Because it's a receiving energy. I don't have the energy to receive it, so why bother listening to it? No matter how dynamic a topic is, if it's gonna drain me, forget about it. I'd rather listen to something else. Anyway, I know that sounds horrible, but it's just my thing. So
no, I'm laughing.
Maybe there's others that feel that way too.
I'm laughing because I agree with you. Now, Greta, my go in 9 minute, and my co-host tries to make the podcast as engaging as he can, but my God, he has the most monotone voice I have ever season of my life, and it's the first. Now, granted, this is the first time he's done a podcast, and so he admits making this story interesting and talking in front of a mic is hard for the first time.
Right.
But I'm going to try and work on him with my skills because I've been a people person since age 6, and I like that because of my cerebral palsy. Because if I wasn't a people person, I wouldn't get half the help I have received. Let's be honest. I mean, and half the fan base I have, let's be honest. You kind of have to take your gifts with your disabilities. Yeah.
Yeah. To me, it's personality, passion, and fun. There has to be a marriage of the three. I met a dynamic and very successful online coach named Jen Scalia in New York, and she was the final presenter after 2 grueling days. And she admitted, just like I had admitted being an emotional eater, which is something most people wouldn't think of because of my discipline in nutrition and fitness. But she admitted that she was an introvert, a very quiet person, and you'd never know it when she was up there. She was just rifling it out, having a good time, being fun. But I also realized that she's able to do that because she wants to speak to what she's sharing in the most powerful, passionate, personable way. To each his own, right? Everybody has their own personality. I'll be the last person to tell someone how to act. But I just really, really believe that I think it is a higher percentage of an audience that's going to feel more captivated if you have passion, personality, and fun in your brilliance, in your expertise, right?
Yeah, and funny enough, I think I interviewed Jen Scalia on my podcast. I remember.
Oh, you did? Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
She's terrific. She's a really great lady.
She's terrific, and I need to do it again. I need to reach out.
Yeah.
Do it again. But yeah, you need to get comfortable in front of a mic. And if you, as Mel and I talked about before, and then I'll go into my list of my 4 favorite podcasts, because yes, along with fashion journalism, I'm studying podcasting. I'm studying journalism to the 10th degree. And so along with fashion, I'm studying journalism. So as Mel mentioned before, if you don't have passion for what you do, there's no hope. And I actually learned that from my boss, believe it or not, today.
Right.
And he's so passionate about teaching, and he's so passionate about diversity and bringing me in that it's not even funny. And he's like, if you want to stay, we'll be happy to have you. You have a job basically until the day you die. And so he's so passionate about education, and he is so passionate about kids. He doesn't necessarily do it for the admin stuff, which granted I don't do either. So, but we are so passionate for the kids, and I am so passionate for the disabled, that if you don't have any passion for your industry, there's no hope. No coach in the world.
You're going to die. I mean, people don't buy coaching. They buy coaches. And if you're doing a podcast, you're actually somewhat of a coach. You're actually somewhat of a coach. And how much you enjoy what you do and the fun that you have doing it and the love that you have doing it is what helps you become effortless in your podcast, in my opinion. If you're struggling to convey your message or hold a conversation in a podcast, it may not be that meaningful to you. I mean, I saw a very painful exercise over the weekend at a conference I was at where this coach brought people up on stage and he wanted to know how simple are the process and steps you're doing. And it was almost predictable. every person up there that was struggling in their company and in their business did not have the fire for what they wanted to do. They were looking for solutions in a form of a process when the actual problem was staring at them right in the face, and they sounded like it, and it was all predictable. Almost every one of them had the same common denominator. You just don't love your business anymore. How can you possibly convey and share?
What?
Yeah. How? If you don't love what you do. I mean, when I did my presentation, one of the 3 topics I said was number 2, which was do it for the one. Don't worry about how many downloads you're going to get. Don't worry about that. Do it for the one person who is figuratively and maybe literally sitting in a dark room somewhere or a cubicle or goes home to a lonely home or apartment and sits there and wonders, why does the world not care about me? And then they hear you. And then they listen to you over and over, and you're consistent and you're passionate and you're loving and you're effortless. And next thing you know, it gives them the courage to stand up and raise their hand and wave it and say, hi, that's me you're talking to. I'd like to engage with you. I'd like to help. You are adding massive value to me. I think I don't care what the topic is. If you cannot focus on the one and understanding that the only job you have is to resonate to the one person who absolutely needs you, then you're in the wrong business.
Yes. And, And no, I
anyway, that's my view on it.
And my boss and I actually talked about, we talked about education, and we talked about the pitfalls in education. We actually had a wonderful conversation, and he actually asked me, because I was a student there, he actually asked me to share with my audience some of my favorite memories, and I mentioned those. But it's really, if you have to relate this back to podcasting, relate this back to education, if you really have a classroom, let's say of 10 kids, or you're giving a presentation in front of 10 new coaches, and one only picks up on the lesson, that's fine. The one person needed it. The one person that needed it.
Yeah, the one person who's actually going to listen, right? And they're going to be willing to share their pains, and you're going to be more of an asset to their life because your skills and talents and research and results are going to resonate to that person that's going to be applicable. And now you're going to have this tremendous testimony, which lends credibility to you as a coach or whatever it is that you do, right? So anyway, it's a pretty simple thing, isn't it? So,
it's a very simple
all boils
thing.
down.
Passion.
Boils down to the love. Right?
It boils down to love. And I'm sorry if you're listening out there and thinking, oh, great, when it's trying to get me to start a podcast. No, Mel and I are not. We're saying just get to list something that you're passionate about, and then do it.
Podcasting is just another method, if you will. Like I can't write to save my life in a speed by which it's going to be effective. Now I can write a book with my spoken words, transcribed, sure. But for me to be a blogger, no way. I don't have the patience or the skill set for it. Right?
No way.
I just don't. But a video blogger? Are you kidding? I've done 300 Facebook Lives and recorded videos uploaded in the last 2 years. I can do that till, I can do it in my sleep, So, a podcast is just a brilliant way to maximize your skill set if you're more of a verbal and auditorial student and teacher. Yeah. Right? You gotta be both. You can't just be one. So, I just think it's just one method. And if you're going to do it, really, really think about the fact that you have to do it consistently. If you want to make a point, you got to be making a point all the time, every week, if you want to be a successful long-term podcaster, in my opinion. Yeah. Right? I mean, if you can hold a conversation once and then the next thing you come on board and you got nothing, well, guess what? You got nothing. You're done.
You got nothing. You get message. No, and
Yeah,
I wanted to end this episode by giving a couple people shout outs. One, you'll hear me talk about the trials and tribulations a lot louder than you have in the past, because I didn't realize how much my schools support me. When I say my schools, I mean my college too, and I didn't realize, well, quite frankly, I didn't realize how much that Aspen Country Day supports me, and yeah, I just didn't realize that. And maybe it has something to do with the way that I grew up and my family's philosophies behind the disabled. And so you guys will be hearing a lot more from me as far as special education, and you guys can come to me with a bunch of questions, and then those said questions I can answer, I can turn to my contacts and make them answer it for me. But eventually I thought about getting my master's in special ed, but I may be sticking to fashion journalism for as long as I live, because I really am a softie, and I don't think that I could do well with the sad cases of special ed compared to my case, because even if I did get my master's in special ed, I would be weeping away in the classroom, and that's not good. That's not good, having a special ed teacher weep over your case, because right now what the school system is doing for the special ed is painful. So I don't think I'm going to get my master's in special ed anytime soon, although you never know. But you guys will be hearing a lot more from me on the special ed front. Today I come out of the closet as a special ed teacher. Today's my coming out of the closet day, and so I'm happy to say that my school does support my podcast. And no, I didn't lose my job for saying what I stated on the podcast today or any podcast. I just do things very gracefully, and that's how I'll continue to do. Anyway, my first favorite, all-time favorite podcast is Dreams in Drive, and that's hosted by Lena Campbell, and that Lena Campbell has also been on my podcast. She's one of my favorite podcasters. Went to Harvard. This is public, by the way. She's Jamaican. She moved to the U.S. as a young child, went to Harvard, is the smartest woman on the planet, and Dreams and Drives with that red logo is something that you guys don't want to miss. And then another favorite podcast of mine is Fractional Minds, as I said, because I'm the co-host, but more importantly, we're breaking the stigma of mental illness. So look out for that one. And another one is The Creative by Evan Smith. The Creative is a fairly short podcast. Yours truly has been on The Creative, and look up Evan Smith, you guys. And fortunately, Evan has been on my podcast too, so you guys can go back and listen to that. Another podcast, believe it or not, I'm going to throw a Strictly Disabilities podcast in here, and it's not Wisdom of Fashion, although Wisdom of Fashion is becoming my favorite podcast because it's something that I'm really passionate about. And so the Strictly Disabled podcast is actually the Abilities podcast by Jacob Holt. And Jacob Holt I tried to get him on my podcast. I need to do it again. Jacob Holt has osteogenesis imperfecta, which means brittle bones disease, which means if he falls over, his bones can break. So he has a podcast that not only focuses on cerebral palsy, not only focuses on his disability, but he focuses on all other disabilities as well. So I just wanted to throw that out to you guys, and those can be found on Stitcher and iTunes and all that good stuff. And then a local podcast, which this local podcast actually doesn't know I'm doing this, a local podcast called The Aspen Real Life, believe it or not, is run by Julian Livingston. And Julian has been on my podcast. She runs a fairly successful blog out of there. And I've kind of pushed her in the direction of a podcast. So she's started up. Yours truly has been on that podcast as well. And another, I think my all-time favorite podcast is, believe it or not, a PT podcast run by Karen Litzy out of NYC, out of New York, and it's called the Healthy, Wealthy, and Smart Podcast. And I've been on there twice. I've been lucky enough to be on there twice, and she's done a really great job of breaking the stigma of physical therapy. So, yes, you can find that one in Stitcher, and you can find that one in iTunes. Oh, and by the way, all these podcasts that I've mentioned have got on the Android side, and most of these podcasts have apps done. They either have apps provided by their hosting companies, or you can get your own app, which I'll get more into on my birthday, actually, because I have a huge surprise for you guys that Mel doesn't even know about. So I'll get when I say apps, I'll get into more of what I'm talking about on my birthday, which Mel is going to lead a podcast on June 19th for my 30th birthday. I have no idea what he's going to ask me. No idea. So I let him lead me, and so it's going to be open conversation about CT. So yeah, let's just try and.
It's going to be fun.
It is going
Absolutely.
to be fun, and try and break the stigma of mental illness, and try and break the stigma of CP. And you guys have some treats coming out for you guys. Literally, I mean, we're getting bigger and better every single day. And as I said, my boss came on today. I'm actually producing that episode as of tomorrow, and so I'll try and make my job one day away. So the rest of the time I can play, I can still be a full-time podcaster who plays teacher on the side. And the only reason why I do that is because of the income. I need the income to keep this podcast going. As Mel has quickly discovered, podcasting is an expensive little sport and less expensive than golf. And so I haven't found the golfing podcast yet, so. But when I do, I will come back and add that to my list of favorite podcasts. So again, go look up Dreams and Drives, go look up Functional Minds, and please, 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 please go look up Healthy, Wealthy, and Smart. Those can be found, except, Functional Minds could be found at in the Android side as well. I know Healthy, Wealthy, and Smart could be found on the Android side. I know Dreams and Drives could be found on the Android side. And, of course, Butterflies of Wisdom and the Wisdom of Fashion could be found on the Android side as well. So, Mel, how are we going to close this episode out? Man, we went all over the map.
Well, we sure covered some quality topics today. If you are even remotely considering doing the podcast, you got to make sure that you can have fun, meaningful conversations about any topic, and have the passion behind what you do, for sure. Total kudos to you and congrats to your educational pursuits. I know that you're going to be terrific, and you're not going to disappear too long. Like I said, if you're not going to be able to hide. So I'm going to put you on my show every once in a while. So
yes,
but
yes.
yeah. So
not
wonderful time.
Hide under the textbooks. No. I know that you guys, all my team will say, when you'll be hiding under the textbooks, come on, we pull you out from under the textbooks. So I'll tell you guys, I'll be honest with you, in September, as soon as I figure out my schedule. Right now, people are putting me in a holding pattern. So once I will work my schedule around this. I will work the podcast around this schedule. We will also work with the Fashion around my crazy schedule. But that's a whole nother story in itself. Maybe we should do a podcast on scheduling. How about that? And now
sure.
we do a podcast on scheduling.
That might be. Yeah. The timing of your podcast is just as important as well because you got to stay consistent. So yeah, that might be a good idea.
Yes.
Sure.
Yes. Let's do a podcast on scheduling in the next couple of weeks.
Okay.
Because thank you.
I'd love to learn
As
that.
the kids come out for summer, I don't care how old you are. I don't care if you have old kids or young kids still living in the house. They're still kids, and
right.
we need to consider them too. So let's do a podcast on scheduling now, because people think, man, how do we keep this podcast so consistent? And so I'm thinking, oh boy, we opened up another can of worms. But
right.
Mel, it's been wonderful as always. And
likewise, absolutely.
Where can people find you, and how can people get a hold of you? And then, yeah.
Well, I'd love to hear from all of you. As you know, that I am a professional coach, and I'm all about your ultimate heart and mind alignment, results, and lifestyle. Please look me up on Facebook under Mel Martin. You can also reach me by email at contactmelmartin@gmail.com. I'd really love to hear from you, and I really want to know what's going on with you. And if there's anything I can do to help you get to that next level, I'll do my best.
And you guys can find me on Twitter at Lynn Kelly Charles. You can also DM me on Facebook. I'm always responding to my DM. And, oh, by the way, if it's your birthday, please, 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 please let me know so I can give you a shout-out on either this podcast or the Wisdom of Fashion. And Mel, that goes for your contacts to please, 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 let's make people feel special. So please, if it's your birthday, please just DM me dates, and I'll make sure that happens. And Mel, that goes for your contacts too. And
you got it. Absolutely.
I just thought of that because, as you know, Facebook Messenger says it's X, Y, and Z's birthday. I'm like, no, let's take it off Facebook and let's give them a shout out. So please email me and please DM me those dates. And even if it's your kid's birthday, because I follow a woman with, who's an artist, and the reason why I follow her is not because she's a jewelry artist. She, which I need to convince him to come on, Wisdom of Fashion. She has a daughter who has severe cerebral palsy. So I'm always following the cerebral palsy cases more than I'm.
Right.
And she's made a name for herself in the jewelry world. So I need to get a hold of her. And of course, today's her birthday. So I
happy birthday.
That I Facebooked her happy birthday, and she of course didn't even realize it was me, I don't think. And so yeah, but I tend to follow the parents with disabilities. As you guys know, yeah, I tend to be a softie for disabilities. So that being said, if it's your birthday, please, 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 please make a deal of it. DM me, DM Mel, especially if your Mel's contacts, not mine. And so let's just make this world a better place. And we'll catch you guys on Friday for a second episode of Wisdom of Fashion. That could be found in iTunes as well. And you guys will be listening to this in May. And for those of you who are graduating either high school, elementary school, or college, good luck. Good luck. Don't do anything stupid. For those of you who are graduating and going into the education field, good luck. For those of you who are graduating and going into the coaching field, Mel, do you want to say any words to new coaches out there before we sign off?
Yeah. You want to be a great coach? Be a great coach for yourself. Be completely honest with yourself. Strengthen your weaknesses so that they can become your strengths. And if you don't know how, hire a coach. Be the best student you could possibly be. Because anything and everything that you learn for yourself and also from your clients builds your professional biography. And coaching is the ultimate pay-it-forward profession because everything you learned in the past helps somebody presently and in the future. That's why you do coaching.
That is so awesome. So if you don't know what you think you know, ask for help. That's why I started this podcast. That's why I finally put my story out there. I was sick of hiding in my own shadow, especially when grieving, and ask for help. That's all. Another podcast in itself. Grief. I don't feel like doing a podcast on grief. Maybe I'll team up with someone and do a podcast on grief one of these days. Yeah, the moment I say that, my DM is going off saying when I need your help with grief. Oops, maybe I shouldn't have said that. But my point is ask for help. Ask for help if you need it. And
Absolutely.
that's how I get all the help I get, because I'm like, I need help. I don't know fashion journalism. I need help. Help me. And so people willing to help me as long as you're nice. And with that being said, I'm going to close up this podcast, and I hope you guys enjoy the rest of May and all those crazy graduations. And please, please, please ask for help. And you guys know where to find Mel and I, and we'll be back on Friday with Wisdom of Fashion. By the time you hear that one, that will be on Tuesday. And then we'll have another guest on Wisdom of Fashion as of next week, and trying to get that one organized. And so it will just be Mel and I doing Wisdom of Fashion on Friday as to why we started this Wisdom of Fashion podcast. And so I hope you guys enjoy another fabulous episode. And for those who stayed to the end, we thank you, and we're always looking out for you guys. And just reach out if you need help. And thanks to you guys.
Thank you, guys. Take care.